fun few months there at the beginning.
Yep. No, it's a fun few months. My little girl is 19. It's been 19 fun years. So it's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hey, David, it's Sherry. I just want to make sure you have access to the doc because that's where we're going to be putting our questions.
You know what? I've been looking at it, seeing if questions were coming up, and nothing had come in to date. But I think that's just because people hadn't put anything up there. Let me check.
There's no questions yet, but that's where we're
Gotcha.
going to.
Then yes, I definitely have access.
Okay, great.
Oops, why isn't it giving me? There we go. Oh, good. Sid started us off, so we're good.
Yeah, I'll start you off. Thanks for doing this AMA, David. I really appreciate it. How's GitLab different than you expected? Like you were already investors, you heard the stories, you had a good feel for what the company was. What was different than what you expected?
Than what I expected. In many ways, it was what I expected, right? I've been a venture capitalist now I just entered my 20th year. So lots of years, I've seen lots of companies, and great entrepreneurs are great entrepreneurs, and which isn't to say that it's the same. It's never the same. It's always incredibly different. There are always new problems. There are always new challenges. But I have had the good fortune of seeing some really successful, fast-moving startups in the past, and that is for sure what GitLab feels like, right? It feels like it has that feel of a company that is on a just a race to success. I guess what's different is in some ways the pace, right? I've been stunned and impressed with the pace of everything at GitLab. Just that, and Sid, you'll appreciate this. I mean, the decision-making pace is spectacular. And what's spectacular about it isn't just that, gee, you make quick decisions and then you move on. It's that every decision, while made quickly, is still made thoughtfully, and it's always reconsidered, right? It's not that you say, great, I gather as much data as I can as quickly as I can, and then I make a decision and we move on and we never revisit it. It's, I'm going to gather all the available data of the moment. I'm going to make a quick decision because that's how GitLab works. I'm going to constantly take additional feedback, and if it turns out that that was wrong for whatever reason, maybe wrong in a little way and we'll adjust, maybe wrong in a big way and we'll change, that happens as well. And that is that's a very hard thing to do. It's a very hard thing to succeed in, and yet it echoes through the entire company. It echoes through product and product strategy, echoes it through building the org, etc. So I guess if I were to say what thing has been most surprising is that you hop on along in the run with this team, and you better be ready to move.
Thanks for that. Next, Tim has the next question.
Hey, David, I'm Tim.
Hey, Tim.
Day 4 for me. But I have
welcome.
Thanks. Hey, so I was curious, when you're in the board meetings, what are your 3 favorite KPIs to review, like really dig into it, and why are those your favorite?
Well, the number one KPI to me is about team, right? I just think that companies are an amalgam of amazing people. And so KPIs related to team are the thing that are really interesting to me. What is what is the attrition rate in a company? How many people leave who you don't want to leave? How fast are you evaluating and growing and making sure that you are always upscaling the team so that you have amazing and great people in the company? So I would always start with people. The statistic that is the most indicative of product is churn, and every great company I've seen has negative churn, and this company has negative churn in spades, right? So so net growth of existing customers, that metric tells you a lot. It tells you a lot about how happy you're making your customers. It tells you a lot about how valuable and successful the product is. So, and then a third KPI, you know, there are a million others, but I think that encapsulating how are the people, you know, what's the people aspect of the business, and then what's the product aspect of the business, which I think are the two biggest and most important aspects of being successful. Those are the ones I'm looking at.
Very cool. Thank you.
Welcome again.
Hey, David, I think I've got the next question. Again, thanks for doing this. It's really incredible to be able to do these AMAs with our board members. And one thing I was interested in as a, you know, outsider insider that you are as a board member is what your thoughts were on GitHub's big announcement yesterday, which if you didn't hear was that they're going to do built-in CI/CD.
You know, I don't think that we have to react in any way to the competition at this point. I think that in the end, the competition's reacting to us, and that's what you're seeing, right? It doesn't surprise me. I mean, if you think about it, for no period of time, excuse me, you know, up until recently, did GitHub even, you know, acknowledge that they had competition. And yet, what's amazing and fantastic is that now they're absolutely adopting the messaging of Gitlab, right? I mean, if you look at it, the end-to-end DevOps, and we're building a platform, etc. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they announce everything we do from now on, because they have to. Unfortunately for them, they're behind. They don't, you know, if you talk about this mindset of speed and engagement and moving quickly, you know, if they were not that before, which they were not, that certainly hasn't changed by being acquired by Microsoft. So I would view it as validation. I would view as everything they've said since you know, since they've been acquired as validation of what we're doing here at GitLab, and they're going to be chasing us, and we should expect that, and we should actually welcome it, because I think it does say that that boy, we're sure on the right path here.
Great, thanks so much. And I think, Sid, you've got the next one.
Yeah, David, we had some people reach out to you directly. Is that different from other companies, and how do you feel about it?
Reach out to me about investing and about...
No, people that saw things going on at GitLab,
gotcha.
and we're like, hey, David, what's your opinion about that?
Yeah, no, that was interesting and is interesting. I guess what I'd say is, one of the reasons I love being an early stage investor is because I want to be engaged, and I want to be part of the team. I understand that I'm not building things, but I want to be helpful, and hopefully you've seen that in the time I've worked with you. My view is, if any member of this team thinks that I can be valuable to the company, then that's a win for me, because it means that I've been able to demonstrate that I'm there for you, and I will always be. And so oftentimes I get involved very early in the company's growth, and so I get to know a lot of people on the team, and so I have lots of communication with people across the team, and I certainly hope that will continue to be the case here. So the biggest challenge is to make sure that conversations that should be had within the company or had within the company before they echo out into the board, right? And so, I'm thrilled to talk to anyone on the team, and I'm easy to reach. But I also want to make sure that, hey, let's make sure that whatever questions or value I can create or whatever is being addressed internally, that you, Sid, have had an opportunity to figure out what are the best resources to bring to bear on those things. And if it turns out that I am that, then I'm thrilled to do it.
Cool, thanks for that. Sheetal is the next question.
Hi, David. I'd like to know what concerns you most about GitLab and what do you think we can do about it?
First, I just want to say I'm really enjoying seeing everybody's homes. I love, is that a cricket bat and a piano behind you? Is that, because that's kind of awesome. All right, now can you say the question again? I was distracted.
Not a problem. So what concerns you most about GitLab and what do you think we can do about it?
Yeah, I mean, what I've learned over time is that company building's hard, right? And every piece of it is hard. And so I don't have a particular concern where I say, gee, this is, this is a unique concern to GitLab because of X, Y, and Z. I mean, the easy answer to that is I have never been involved in a company that has a fully distributed team. And in fact, sort of no one has, right? I mean, there are very quickly, GitLab will be the largest scaled organization that has no offices. And so that is a unique situation. But what I've seen is a lot of really interesting and valuable ways of dealing with that, very thoughtful ways of dealing with that. But like all organizations, as you scale, those things, those opportunities also become challenges. So it will be interesting, right? As we try to continue the communications, we try to bring the whole team together. We try to make sure that it's a high functioning organization to be able to continue to scale all of the things that have made that a successful practice to date. I guess the good news is, as companies grow and scale, into the thousands of employees, and I saw this with Splunk, where I was an early board member and stayed on the board for 13 years. You have communications challenges no matter what, right? When you have, Splunk now has more than 5,000 employees. Well, that is going to necessarily be a distributed workforce. It may be distributed in offices, but does that really change the nature of how you have to communicate with thousands of people? And so as we rapidly get from hundreds of people to thousands of people, as we continue to take advantage of the amazing nature of this distributed team, how we think about making sure that people still know each other, like each other, or have this open communication and can get together in ways that are valuable for company building will be a challenge that in some ways is unique to GitLab, but in other ways isn't unique at all. And so I'm kind of an unflinching optimist. And so I rarely think about challenges. I think about opportunities. And I think that in many ways is as much an opportunity as it is a challenge.
Thanks.
Hey, David. This is John May. Thanks for coming on board today. My questions are around the IPO stage and whether, your thoughts around doing a direct listing versus an IPO. And what do you think we need to be doing to be successful at that point?
Well, the number one thing that you need to do to be successful in either is to continue doing what you're doing, right? Whether it's an IPO or a direct listing, it is just a financing event in the end. I mean, it's a monumental one and it has a big impact and it's a great validation. It's lots of really important things. But in the end, it's really just hey, here's the company, here's how we present it going forward, here's the business, and then a different structure for how the company is valued and measured and all of that. And so the very best thing that we can do in advance of that is to continue to grow the business successfully, right? Is to continue to scale the team, is to continue to grow product and sales and market and marketing and all of the things that are making this company amazing as we speak. The biggest shift in this process ultimately is that one really needs a sense of predictability, and predictability is kind of elusive always. I mean, it is hard to come by predictability. And so the biggest thing I think we have to think about is, do we know what's going to happen here? Do we understand how the company's going to grow? Do we understand how sales are going to work? Do we know how to translate marketing dollars into new customers? And as I said earlier, I love that we have some, some predictability around how early customers become bigger customers. That's an incredible gift when it comes to building a company and presenting it in the public markets. But that's the biggest challenge. As for an IPO versus a direct listing, the focus on direct listing is sort of a new and interesting shift, and there are some very real advantages of it. If you look at the public markets, the reality is that the IPO process is considered a success when you take a company public and then the shares trade up 30%, 40%, 50%. But all that means is that 30 or 40 or 50% of the value in your shares has gone to somebody else other than you, other than the company. So it's a rather imperfect process in that regard. Whereas the direct listing process, the company shares sell at the price people are willing to pay for it, and those listing those shares, whether it's the company or company shareholders, get that value. So there's something really compelling about that. On the other hand, one of the things about an IPO is that the company raises hundreds of millions of dollars. That's what the IPO is for. It's for selling company shares to create a market, and that creates value. So we're kind of assessing the value of each. We, in light of the information we have, there's a ton of information about IPOs. There's a smaller amount of information about direct listings, and what I'd say is we'll have huge flexibility if we continue to grow this company the way we have. We continue to get amazing customers to come on board and then predictably grow their accounts. And so I think that the number one focus is just keep kicking butt.
That's great. Thanks. I really appreciate the way that you explained what a non-direct or a direct IPO or direct listing is, because I don't think people always understand that in that way. So thank you.
Perfect.
I think Amanda's next.
Yep. Hey, David. Thanks for taking the questions. So I was just wondering, is there anything that you've seen at Gitlab which has influenced how you're dealing with current investment or how you're seeking out investments in the future? And if so, what is it that has changed kind of the way you work with that?
Yeah, sure. Well, one piece that's for sure affected me is this, I have to say. The reality, and this is a mantra of the company. I know it's a mantra of Sid's, but I think it's a mantra of the company, which is that that mixed meetings are a failure. That if you have people live and you have people in virtual, that is not as successful. I am 100% converted to that. I have to say that there is no worse experience than being the person on the phone or on a video while everybody else is sitting around a room. You are a second-class citizen. You can't be heard. You can't hear. Interjecting is hard. They're just a bunch of things, right? Whereas this, everybody is on the same playing field. You learn the etiquette. You get to a point. And so my experience here at Gitlab has shown me that that's a huge difference, and I am urging all of my companies to do that. Now, the tricky part is the only way you can really do that is if anybody doesn't show up, then nobody shows up. And there are very few companies that are willing to do that, but they should, because it's better. It's just better. So that's great. there are lots of, there are obviously lots of things that people have, that I have experienced. I think that one of the things that's interesting is that GitLab is pushing the outer limits of transparency in ways that create opportunities and challenges for your legal team, challenges for sales and marketing challenges. I mean, it creates all sorts of challenges, but at the same time, it also creates incredible appreciation across the company, across the employee base, across the customer base, to say like, oh, we know where you're going, we know what's being built, we know how you think about these things. I think that's profoundly valuable. Now I've experienced the downside of transparency, for what it's worth, is that when things aren't going as well, hello, there's a little person who just ran behind you. When things aren't going quite as well as you had hoped, then you are transparent about that as well. And so I am hopeful that we never have to encounter that. I will say my partner, Dave Marquardt, who founded August Capital, he was the first and only private investor in Microsoft. And he sat on that board for 33 years. And for 31 years, Microsoft had sequentially up quarters. They made more money every quarter for 30 or 120 some odd quarters, which is an amazing thing. Being transparent about that is great. When occasionally things don't go as anticipated, then you have the equal challenge of being transparent about it. So I will say that I think that this company, that GitLab, has taught me that there's real value in being more transparent than many companies I work with are, and I certainly am urging them to think about how to make sure that folks who are building this company have more information and feel more invested, feel like they can have those conversations, and so that we'll try and bring that to bear as well.
I think next one is me. Hi, David. What are some lessons you learned from the book Bad Blood, which you tweeted, I think, last month?
So here's a little secret. And Sid, I don't know if you know this, and it has created some challenge for me. In
please,
the GitLab
Mike, I think this is a public live stream, just so you're aware.
It's fine. I'm happy to. But the secret is that I'm dyslexic, and so I consume information by virtue of people and other sources, and so I'm often fine though. What do you think of? Have you read this book? This book is blah. That the reality is I will not have read it, because to read it will have taken me a monumental amount of time. I do find that books on tape, our audiobooks are helpful, but very slow. So I'm gonna declare dyslexia on this one. I look forward to it. In fact, I guess I'd ask you, what do you think I should have learned from it if you have read it, and that will be the best thing for me in this instance.
I mean, I don't have it's just the bad patterns. That's what I see. Nothing specific to GitLab. I think we are on the good side of the startup world. So
great. Well, I appreciate it, and thank you for the question.
Hopefully, the outcome will be the opposite of what happened in Bad Blood, but also many of our practices are quite the opposite. So that encourages me that the outcome hopefully will be the opposite as well. David, by the way, you sent me the longest emails of anybody. They're really good, but couldn't tell by your emails that you weren't a speedy reader.
No, I appreciate that, and I apologize for mishearing the question. You rightfully point out that Bad Blood is the book that I recently spent the time to listen to, and because it is fascinating, and yes, to to Sid's point, no, we will not suffer the same challenges. But the one reason is, good Lord, talking about transparency, you couldn't have two companies that are less alike in that regard, right? Here is a company where the CEO kept to herself all information, siloed teams, tried to control the exchange of information. It turned out for nefarious reasons, if that book is correct. And here we are living in a world where, Sid goes out of his way to share detailed information so that everybody is included. And it would be extraordinarily hard to imagine that this company is hiding anything. If it is, it's hiding in plain sight, and that's certainly not the case. So, lots of great patterns there to not be followed, and yes, Sid, I appreciate that. I definitely what I've learned at GitLab is that a lot of the communication, because it is transparent and because it is important to have context, because it gets shared not by people to people, but through posting information, etc., that I should be very detailed and focused and share the information that's relevant. And so hopefully those long emails are useful, but if they ever grow too long, by all means, let me know.
This is Dara. It looks like I've got the last question to you. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Just curious, you talked about who you don't compare us to, the other company in the book. What companies do you compare us to in terms of growth, methodology, sort of when you bucket us or talk about GitLab to other people, how do you sort of compare to other companies? Or what companies do you compare us to?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I think there's in some ways it's easy to use a heuristic and say, oh, look at, here I'm going to compare GitLab to every great company that's come before it. So look, it's, like but better than an Atlassian, and it grows in many ways, in ways that are Slack-like but better, all those things. But what I tend to do is talk about the characteristics of high growth companies, of companies that are disproportionately successful, that outperform, and why it is that GitLab is characteristic of those companies, right? That it has the nature of a company that's going to be wildly successful. And my heuristic, my sort of incredibly shorthand over 20 years in the venture business for what makes a company great is team, TAM, and team. It's amazing people building amazing things that are addressing TAM, total addressable market, a gigantic market opportunity. And that's a wildly oversimplified. And as you well know, every day brings some new challenge. But in the end, what I see in companies like GitLab are people who are fantastic, who are committed and engaged and excited, addressing some big opportunity that it turns out just keeps getting bigger, right? In 99.7% of the cases or something, maybe 99.9% of the cases, the market just keeps getting smaller, right? I always say, like, don't expect, if you don't think it's a big market today, it's sure not going to get bigger. And yet, in companies that are truly, transformative, that turns out not to be the case. It turns out that the market gets bigger. I foolishly turned down investing in the Series A of Uber because they had Uber Black, and I just wasn't sure how big of a market the black car market was. Well, it turns out obviously that was myopic. Here, if you were to say, like, oh, what's the market for Git repositories? Well, you're totally missing the point. And in fact, one of the reasons that we were excited to invest when we was the strategy to build a company that was a platform business, right? Was the opportunity to build something end to end that would integrate all these pieces and make it better as a result. I will say for sure that our best investments over time, whether it was a Microsoft or an Intuit or a Splunk, now a GitLab, they have all been platform businesses, right? They transform how people do business by creating a platform that gets bigger and more valuable and addresses a bigger problem and a bigger market over time. And so we invested in GitLab with the belief that this was a platform business, but we invest in lots of companies with a belief that they're platform businesses. It just turns out that the best ones are. And so I suppose you could say that, that I talk about this as I talk about great platform businesses, and I do. But first and foremost, I say, you know what? GitLab is a unique company. It's setting the bar for distributed teams. It's growing in ways that are unparalleled, and others will compare themselves to GitLab.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, David.